So there we go. Welcome, Najamba. Great to have you here. Your first transition innovation group. We'll just give one more minute for everybody to come, but we will do some quick hellos and check in with people. And as people join us, we'll say hello to everybody, but maybe I'll just start off. Welcome, Dana. Great to have you here.
Hello.
So I've met everybody, but I'll just do a quick hello. Super excited for today's session. We have Cheralyn from Propel Impact, formerly Social Innovation Academy and National Social Value Fund. So congrats on your newly formulated organization. So I'm Michelle Baldwin, and I work with Community Foundations of Canada. We help to host this space for folks to come together to talk about transition and infrastructure, and to provide different opportunities for us to sense, make, share, convene. And so Cheralyn is going to lead us in a discussion and bringing some big questions today. I did want to mention I'll give a few announcements related to some of the work that we're doing together. But first of all, I am calling on a beautiful sunny day from the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lune, Pequot, and Chungtay peoples here in what's now called London, Ontario. I can see beautiful yellow leaves that are shining, and just really feeling grounded. I listened to a Twitter Spaces before our session about in the Web3 space on diversity, equity, inclusion, and I decided to do that as I walked through the neighborhood. So it was quite beautiful. So just a few things to share for today. We do have our National Observer series still going, and we had a really cool article this week called "There's Reason to Have Hope for Pollinators." So Hannah Thomas will be joining us at our next Transition Innovation Group, but I'll pop the story. It's just a really neat example of transition innovation, and that's really the point of this series, is to try to highlight those and, to bring those forward. So thanks, Stephen, for introducing us to Hannah and to Nectar. I learned a lot in reading this. It's at the intersection of the pollinator, AI, technology, transition space. So just amazing the things that are happening. And then while I'm still on a bit of a roll about what's coming up, we do have some really exciting conversations that are coming up over the next little bit. So we have SCALE, the Sectoral Climate Arts Leadership for the Emergency, coming up on November 16th. John Hallward from Give3 was hoping to share with us November 30th, a big idea around a social economy concept he wants to bring forward. And then December 14th, we have Thomas, who's here today, Culture, a Barrier, or a Catalyst for Change. And then December 15th, the next day, we have a collaboration with the WASN Network, which is a global network, and Social Innovation Exchange in UK, bringing Cassie Robinson to talk about collective imaginations. So that's kind of what we have lined up for the next little bit, and then some things already in the hopper for the new year. But certainly, if this is something you're interested in, please let us know. A reminder that if you have, there's Indy as well. If you have anything that you want to put in the, thanks Taryn Lucas for putting in the notes from today. And if you have anything that you'd like to talk about or put into the chat, then please, like a resource, an event that's coming up, anything that's on your mind, we'll capture that in the notes and make sure that we're sharing that out. I did want to mention Taryn came to Community Foundations of Canada through Social Innovation Academy, now Propel Impact, and I had worked with Social Innovation Academy in my past roles. So really excited for Cheralyn to share today, and just wanted to also give a shout out to Taryn as well. who may want to share a little bit at some point too. So let's do quick introductions. These are rapid fire introductions because we do have some new people with us today. Taryn, why don't we start with you? And then I'll end with you, Cheralyn, so that we'll just roll into what you're going to share. So Taryn and then Thomas.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody, new and old. I really am happy to join you here today. I call it Treaty Lands, the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, homeland of the Métis Nation as well. I work with CFC, work in partnership with Michelle through the transformation team, as well as doing some program coordination. So I'm really happy to join you guys here today.
Thomas and then Stephen.
Yes, I hail from the Salish Sea, which is the unceded territory of the Masonic people here in Victoria region, Vancouver Island. My main focus these days, besides my urban farm and growing food and living sustainably, is to champion the New Tomorrow Pledge, which I've posted on the chat on a number of occasions. And I'll be giving the presentation on December 14th about the role that culture plays to either support or hinder change.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sounds good. I think I'm next. And
Yep.
Hello, everyone, old friends and new. Stephen Huddart. I'm a former CEO of the McConnell Foundation. I've been working on transition issues for a while here in Jojoge, also known as Montreal, traditional home of an unceded territory of the Mohawk peoples, who take up the eastern door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. And in this time of reconciliation, it's such an important place to be and to be paying attention. As according to Anishinaabe prophecy, we are in the seventh fire, a time of transition for humanity when our culture, our beliefs, our relationships with each other and the land are in fact going through a huge change. So to be in this group with you is a great privilege. Thank you for being in this space, and thank you, Michelle, for bringing us together.
Great. Tamara and then Dana.
Wonderful. Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. My name is Tamara Connell. I use she, they pronouns. I'm calling in today from the unceded ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, what we may refer to these days as Vancouver, BC. And I represent an organization called Academy for Sustainable Innovation, which Cheralyn and I have remarked is now thankfully at least in title distinct from Propel. So yeah, we work on climate action, leadership, capacity building, that sort of work. So pleasure to be here and really excited about this talk. Thanks so much.
Dana and then Najamba.
Hi, everybody. So glad to see you. I'm on my phone so that I can listen in and go for a little walk in a little bit, which I try to do on calls like this. My name's Dana. I work with Michelle and Taryn at Community Foundations of Canada. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm calling in from the unceded and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq, just about 30 minutes outside of Chibuktuk, otherwise known as Halifax.
Great. Najamba and then Lori.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all, and thank you, Michelle, for the invitation. I'm joining you in today from the traditional ancestral and unceded territories of the Musqueam people in Kerrisdale in broader Vancouver. So great to know that Tamara is a neighbor, actually. And I work at Vancouver Foundation. So this is my first time joining in this community, and I'm very excited to listen in and understand what we are doing, what we're discussing, and Java Coffee, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, it was fun. We were on a panel together with Dialot's Global Diplomacy Summit. And so, yeah, thrilled that you're here. Okay, Lori and then Brenda.
Thanks, Michelle. Hello, old and new friends. I am calling in from the Blackfoot Confederacy. So that's the Piikani, the Kainai, and the Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina and the Stoney Nakoda Nations and Métis Region 3. I live in Mohkintas, also known as Calgary, and I am in a sabbatical / transition year and deeply exploring what that means personally, and then also how I take my experiences from my previous career and to this second career of my life. So it's been great to be part of these circles to kind of stay connected and reimagine what's possible outside of what I used to do. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lori. Brenda, and then Graham.
Hi, I'm Brenda. I'm from Niagara, the territorial lands of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee. And my social enterprise is called Campus for Communities of the Future. And I'm also representing Catalyst 2030, the Canada chapter, as their co-chair. So.
Great, thanks, Brenda. Graham, and then Indy.
Bonjour tout le monde. Merci, Michel. Graham Singh de la Fondation des Centres Trinité. I can't give a better introduction to Montreal and its relationship to our Canada's First Peoples than Stephen has done. But I will say that our work in trying to see church properties handed over to equity-seeking groups touches on all kinds of questions of colonization and our relationship with all kinds of people who have been excluded from those religious narratives. I'm excited as I come here to let you know that for COP15, the biodiversity conference coming to Montreal, we're gearing up to get all kinds of people around that question of how social purpose real estate can play its part when redeployed for communities in environmental sustainability. And I have to also say, I'm sorry that I'm on standby with a band council out west that I'm meant to be joining them between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. So I might be here for all of our meeting, or I might suddenly disappear, but it's for good causes. And it's great to be with you. I know many familiar faces here, and great to be here. Thank you. Back to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Graham. Indy, and then I think Catherine's just listening, so then we'll go to Sarah.
Hi, this is Indy Johar from Dark Matter Labs. I'm from London, not London, Ontario, but London, UK. Invited Canadian from a distance to enjoy this beautiful conversation. So delighted to be here.
Thanks, Indy. Catherine's with capital W. If you do want to say something, then please come off. Oh, there you are right there. Oh, wait, nope. Sarah, that's you coming off and you switched places. Okay, Sarah, over to you.
Hi, everybody. This is my first call. I'm kind of excited. My name is Sarah Saso, and I'm a self-described purpose whisperer, but my day job is that I am with Meridian Credit Union, and I'm the new director of ESG. And I have a long history of working in this space, having worked for HSBC, CIBC, Manulife, and Green Shield Canada. I probably know a lot of people on this call, and I'm really interested in the work of ESG and how it relates to access, affordability, climate change, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm working on putting out my very first ESG report for Meridian and doing some impactful work in this space, aligning with our purpose as a credit union and our community investment team as well, to make sure that we do address some of the issues that you're talking about specifically today. So thanks for making space for me.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, welcome to you and Najumba to your first meeting, and to all those that have been here before. Great to have you here. And let me think here. So did I miss anybody except for Cheralyn? I think we're good. I think we're all set for you, Cheralyn. If you go to the weekly notes, you'll see a background presentation and a little write-up with some of the key questions that she's bringing to TIG, as we call Transition Innovation Group for short. Cheralyn, I'll let you do an introduction, but just delighted to have had the opportunity to know you the past few years, and just to have you sharing today. So I'll turn it over to you and be in the background supporting you with whatever you need.
Great, thanks so much, Michelle. And so good to see some familiar faces and new ones on this call. I'm joining in from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, known today as Ottawa, where I recently moved about a month and a half, 2 months ago from Vancouver. So drove across Canada for work with Propel Impact, which I will tell you about very shortly. In terms of my background, I born and raised on the West Coast. I went to the University of British Columbia where I studied business, but wasn't too happy in that environment. Didn't really see myself fitting in with a lot of my colleagues or classmates, sorry, who wanted to work in accounting, marketing, finance. And so I did what any normal business student would do and started a necktie and bow tie company, which was probably the most random venture I could have started. I transitioned it to becoming a zero waste operation where I used all of the scraps in different ways. I did a lot of weddings. I sold in retail stores, sold online, spent a lot of time sewing by myself in Kitsilano. And through that experience, I learned for the first time what a social enterprise was about 2 years in, and in my third year of university, which is when it finally hit me what I was studying business for. So I became very excited with the concept of, social innovation, social impact, using business as a force for good. But it was kind of an uncommon path that I wanted to go down, but there were more and more students who were interested in the same things that I was interested in. I worked with a few early stage social ventures across Vancouver and Toronto at that point. And then about a year after graduating from UBC, started up the Social Innovation Academy with a couple other colleagues, another recent graduate, and then a professor at UBC, James Tanzu, who some of you may know. And that's been kind of my journey here. So I'm very happy to tell you more about our work and more of what we've seen over the past few years. Michelle, would it make sense for me to share my screen and kind of like walk through some of the background?
Yeah, sure.
Would that be helpful?
Yeah, let's do a bit of that for sure. And you should be able to share screen.
Perfect. I'm also going to say this is my first TIG meeting as well. So, if there's anything that would be helpful to like interrupt me, let me know. If you have questions along the way, please do so. So a little bit of history of what is now Propel Impact. We went through a merger exactly a month ago and announced that kind of to the masses, but we've been quietly working on it for the past 6 months. We merged with another nonprofit called the National Social Value Fund, and I'll share very briefly what both of these organizations focused on. So Social Innovation Academy, we prioritize training and experiential learning for young people across Canada, anyone 18 to 30, to learn about social innovation through consulting engagement. So we work with social enterprises, nonprofits, charities, broadly known as social purpose organizations, to provide them very critical capacity building support in a very kind of targeted way. So not so much focused on recommendations or a list of items that they could implement in their organizations, but creating for them marketing collateral or a database of potential funders that are aligned with their strategy. So it's something that they could use immediately. We also ran or continue to run an internship program where we work with impact investing funds, accelerators, and advisory firms to place trained analysts with their organizations during the summer. And that's how I got to know Taryn through our fellowship program. And she was our analyst that was placed with Community Foundations of Canada this past summer. And they were very, very lucky to keep her on full time in this capacity, and so that all of you can meet her and work with her. And National Social Value Fund was our sister nonprofit for a few years, and their goal was to set up student-led impact investing funds in communities all across Canada. So to date, there are 7 funds in Vancouver, Victoria, Calgary, Kingston, London, Ottawa, and Montreal. And I'll share a little bit more about their work, but really putting the power in the hands of students to go out, raise funds, conduct due diligence, find the ventures to invest in, and essentially make the final decisions of who will get that capital. And because of the work that we had done for so many years together, we saw it absolutely necessary to merge into one organization to be able to tell this story in a much more cohesive way. So now, as we are known as Propel Impact, we have a 2-sided mandate where we serve 2 distinct groups of communities. So first is for youth. For people like myself, a lot of the classmates that I saw in my undergrad, we're creating experiential learning programs that provide on-ramps for young people to forge careers in impact, which I'm sure all of you know is not an easy thing to navigate when there aren't these clear-cut paths towards careers, say the same way there is in accounting or finance, not even knowing, you know, who to talk to, what kind of skills are needed, what does that training plan look like? And then on the flip side, we serve what we call impact-driven organizations through kind of a 1-2 punch of investment, and then followed by capacity building support. So these organizations receive capital through the funds, and then a follow-on team of analysts can go in and support them with marketing, creating an impact measurement framework, for example. Or on the flip side, we have been able to identify deal flow for the funds through the projects that we've done historically. So kind of looking at it as a two-pronged approach to supporting organizations. In terms of how our programs do this exactly, we run 2 programs during the academic year. We have an impact investing fellowship, which is exactly what I just shared, the 7 student-led funds that conduct place-based impact investments into their communities. And then we have our impact consulting fellowship, where they work directly with organizations on 8-week-long projects. And youth from these programs graduate into our summer analyst program, where they're provided with paid internships with intermediaries across the country. And then for organizations, it's this suite of services that they can access through Propel Impact. I'm going to pause there because I've just shared a lot of information. So happy to take any questions about how the programs work, types of organizations we've seen in the past, anything like that.
And maybe Cheralyn, when you do resume your presentation, maybe just hit slideshow, and then because it's
sure
hard
quite
to see.
Small.
Yeah, because it's small print, but because I have access to the presentation. But yeah, any questions that folks have? Or maybe Taryn too, just if you want to share anything about your experience, but maybe I'll just scroll through and see if I see any hands. Anybody questions for Cheralyn yet?
Cheralyn, this is really interesting. Could you give us a sense of the magnitude in terms of numbers of people going through or who've gone through the program? Yes, there we go. That was quick. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So we've had close to 400 participants complete the impact investing, impact consulting fellowships, or the internship, sometimes all 3 programs. We've done 163 projects that are pro bono, and then there's been 430,000 invested directly by the funds, but oftentimes they're looking for co-investment for these early stage ventures that they're supporting.
It's like, Stephen, you're just like ready to carry the presentation forward. Taryn, do you want to share a bit about your experience?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to my experience. So I came to the knowledge of this program through my education path when I was at Red River Polytech, or Red River College Polytech in Manitoba, Winnipeg, attending the Social Innovation and Community Development Program. My instructor told me about the program and told me I should apply. I met with Cheralyn and others and just learned about it and was like, yes, I need to do this. So I did the actual fellowship program, which ran through the academic year. And then, so the investing fellowship in regards to the consulting fellowship. So we do the one for youth that I was doing. And then that process was completed. It was really great. I got to work with a whole bunch of SPOs in Alberta, in BC. Got to do a lot of different experiences in what I was actually studying and have some of that like practical, like due diligence, real world application of it, which was a really great overall just impact to my career path as well as my education path. But the main takeaway too from me was being able to do the summer analyst program. Because if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair today, joining the group here with you all. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with Michelle and do the transformation work. I wouldn't, as somebody from Manitoba, whom some of these opportunities that exist outside of the Manitoba space are sometimes not as accessible to me. This opportunity in this program was one way that I was able to access a market of social innovation that just wasn't as permeable being somewhere like in Manitoba. So I can only just echo sentiments of just renowned joy for being a part of the program overall. Cheralyn and Tyson and everybody have been so great.
We didn't even rehearse that.
No, I know.
Thank you, Taryn.
And maybe just from the experience of working as like maybe the employer side, I guess, just the process that that you go through, like there's great learning around equity and in hiring and the engagement process, great tools that we're able to implement. And while I had done a lot of that in the past, there was some things I was definitely could improve on. And so just really valued that. And then just I think just the way that you bring the communities together, it's almost maybe a bit similar to Transition Innovation Group, where you're really trying to provide that peer support and like a networked approach where you're, in conversation with each other, in dialogue, but also able to respectfully, have some critical analysis and conversations. And so just the way that I've seen you create that kind of space is pretty epic. So that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, the equity and inclusion piece has been really critical for us from the beginning, because we realized early on that we're playing this kind of, without meaning to, like this gatekeeper role for talent into the sector, because we're identifying them early on in their academic careers, which then becomes an internship, which then leads into full-time employment. So taking that responsibility very seriously, and building out very structured approaches to recruitment. So we've actually developed like tons of interview question rubrics where we have scoring systems when we're interviewing. So it's not based on what I identify with as being a good answer, but it's like pretty mathematical, to try to reduce bias in that process, and then being able to share those processes with the organizations that we work with to host our summer analysts. And here are our resources. We want you to be able to take these into your organizations and apply these same structures within say CFC. I see Najamba's hand.
Yeah, Cheralyn, thanks a lot. This is beautiful. I was curious to understand what kind of support have you needed along the way, and where are you actually getting that support?
Mm-hmm. So for us as a nonprofit, so we were really lucky in that at the very beginning of Social Innovation Academy's kind of lifetime in 2019, we were spun out of a research center at UBC, so the Sauder Center for Social Innovation and Impact Investing, and we received our initial funding from HSBC. So Sarah, when you were speaking, I was like, oh, cool, you were there, and they provided the much needed, kind of initial capital that we needed to run the program, pay our interns, which was essentially our main budget items. And following HSBC's contribution, we were supported through the first investment readiness program to run our second internship program. So we had this kind of like almost like institutional privilege of being associated with the university. Like we are a scrappy nonprofit, but we had a lot of support behind us. And because of our connections with UBC, we were able to access a lot of pieces there. But I'll speak very quickly to why I'm in Ottawa. So last year, we identified a need to look for more funding when HSBC's priorities changed. And Carleton University, based here in Ottawa, stepped in a really big way to support some of our core operations, but also offer us support through different departments, helping us develop curriculum. I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the other initiatives that have come out of Carleton, but Common Approach to Impact Measurement is another one of the projects that was spun out of the business school here. And so I moved to Ottawa to work more closely with their team. And then along the way, bits and pieces of grants here and there. But we've been identifying ways to just bring in revenue as like whether that's through consulting engagements, we've started to do a lot more research, which I'll speak to later on as a way to kind of supplement the grants that we receive. And I mean, that's like purely financial support. In terms of like community support, it's been immense. I think, being youth-led, there's a lot that's, just trust that's given to us. And, we're able to take up the space because we are young, in a way that I think we haven't quite realized, how lucky we are to have been afforded that. And being at these tables where organizations are very willing to support us and work with us for that reason. I'll just jump very quickly to run through a quick example of what this looks like in practice. So last year, one of my favorite social enterprises in Vancouver, East Van Roasters, was close to shutting down. And they approached our Vancouver chapter, so our Vancouver Impact Investing Fund, and they supported with a loan, but not stopping at this loan. The associates went out and raised a co-investment of $150,000 from other players, including Van City, and essentially prevented this social enterprise from shutting down, and ensured that their 12 employees could continue to work there. And recognizing that, financial support isn't all that's needed for an organization that's in this very tenuous position, we were able to offer post-investment support through marketing and sales strategy over the following 3 months after this investment was made. So this is just a very tangible case study of what this looks like in the real world. A few more of the organizations that we've kind of worked with over the years, either through projects or investments. As of last year, when we did our impact measurement work, we saw that 49% of our alumni are working within social and environmental impact. These are some of the organizations that they are now working full-time across Canada. And so I think that's my favorite part, is just hearing back from alumni when they land a job that they're really, really excited about in the sector, and knowing that we played a small role in that, say for Taryn's example. And very quickly on the equity and inclusion piece, what I keep seeing again and again in the sector is this lack of, or not lack of, but desire to have a more diverse talent pipeline, and continually seeing the same names and people pop up for positions. And I think what's really exciting is that, while we don't necessarily play a role in the challenge in diverse leadership within organizations, we are building this pipeline of talent that will fill these leadership roles in the future. And as we've been tracking over the past few years, we're seeing our cohorts become more and more diverse. These are some stats of our current cohort of fellows. So 61% identifying as women and gender non-binary, 88% identifying as Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And there's so many other ways that we could assess diversity in our cohorts. These are the 4 that we focused on. And we also, for our impact consulting fellowship, which has always been open to youth 18 to 30, that was a very conscious decision, so that we weren't just recruiting from post-secondaries or just looking for youth that have gone down this more traditional education path, but offering opportunities for people who have, maybe worked in the trades or other types of work that we should identify as being valuable as well. That being said, we have participants and alumni who have come from schools all across Canada, from Victoria all the way to Halifax as well. And the EDI piece plays into our research as well. I mentioned that we started doing national research over the past couple of years. Last year, we co-authored and led the research on a report called In the Dark, where we partnered with Setsi and New Power Labs to understand how impact investing funds and impact accelerators are approaching equity, diversity, and inclusion within their work. We had some really interesting insights, and kind of encourage you to read this. It's lengthy. which I also felt when I was writing it. It was very, very long, but I think it's worth the read to understand some of the kind of the tactical things that you could bring into your organizations as well. And this leads me into what I've been paying attention to over the past almost 4 years now, and where I would love to have open up for conversation with this group when we're thinking about youth and what I've seen just in having like one-on-one conversations. We talk a lot about privilege, and we hear participants talking about how they come from a certain level of privilege, whether that's the privilege of education and learning, or even financial privilege, and how it affords them the ability to even work in this sector at all. And that's not every young person that works in this field, but even from my own experience, because I come from a certain level of privilege, I am able to find a job that I care very deeply about. So that's something we've been noticing. We know that the number of alumni working in impact would be higher if job security matched that of the corporate sector. And that's just a reality, I think, that we need to understand and then try to unpack as a sector. And then in terms of like regional representation, we've had less luck in recruiting youth from Atlantic Canada and Northern Canada. So anyone who's based in those regions, we're always looking for community partners to help us build relationships and hopefully find young people, but also organizations that could use our support or participate in our programs. From an organizational perspective, we've always struggled with language in terms of like, what do we call these organizations that we're aiming to serve? We have seen that a lot of organizations like don't know that they're social enterprises, far less know that they're considered social purpose organizations, with that being a newer term, and understandable language is really critical. So kind of using more plain language when we're trying to reach organizations that we would identify as such. Many organizations aren't aware of the financing tools available to them. A lot of them would prefer to access grant funding than equity or debt. And investments into truly early stage social ventures is actually quite few and far between, which is exactly the area of focus that our Propel Impact funds hones in on. And in terms of the discussion questions, and I think this is where we're going to get into the really interesting part, is starting with this question of how can we as a sector create more secure career paths within social innovation and social finance, ensuring that we don't lose our great talent to other fields, because I think this is a reality that we need to address. And how do we retain talent for the sector, given that there is a disparity in compensation and job security with traditional corporate jobs? I haven't really voiced these questions before to anyone else, but I thought that this would be a great group to start with. So I will stop sharing my screen, and I'd love to just start there.
Awesome. Thanks, Cheralyn. And you'll notice in the chat, I did try to put a few links from what you were talking about. Louise has already said she could help with Atlantic Canada partners and people from Inspiring Communities. And so, yeah, and I put the questions in the chat if you're, but I think we're starting with the first one. So who would like to kick us off?
I'll go, Sarah. Just talking about ensuring that youth voices are at the table as we plan for a future that's more equitable and inclusive. The Globe Forum, or the Globe series, is coming in February or March to Toronto, and working on with an organization. I want to get the name right. One sec. It's the Globe Change. And it's February 27th to March 1st. And there is a youth component, and they're looking at giving people access to the table at these conversations about sustainability and other things. So finance, social impact, etc. And there's a youth forum, and people can apply to have their access paid for. So, you know, my comment is we have to have people at the table that have that are the future and have difference of opinion or new and informed opinions that are relevant and should be at the table. So there is you know, this important thing coming up, and it would be great for people to be able to make this information available and get people, because it's open now, to apply to attend if there are young people that want to. I'm just looking for the name of the youth component, and I'll put it in the chat as soon as I can find it. But
Awesome.
it's called Leading Change or something like that. I'll find out who it is and I'll put it in the chat. But you know, I feel very strongly that as groups gather to have these discussions about the future of sustainability and social impact and social finance, we need to have voices at the table that are the next generation, and they should be, if they have barriers to entry, either because of finances or travel costs or whatever, we should help them get there. So I will put that in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. I did put the link to the series, but the link to the youth leadership piece would be great. Cheralyn, do you any comment before we go to Louise?
No, I was just going to say thanks for putting that on our radar, and we'll definitely share it out with our Propel community.
Okay. Leading Change, Dana says it's called. Great. Awesome. Louise.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for whoever shared that. You immediately had me thinking about the advocate for young Africans who didn't even get tickets to go to COP27 in Egypt, yet people in the global south and most people who are equity deserving are going to be most impacted by climate action and have had the least in terms of putting us in the situation we're in. In terms of the question we're asking about the sector, I appreciate what you're asking, and I want to answer your question from lived experience as well as from just opinionating, because I think, this is one of the things I love about this group is our lived experience and our working experience and all our experiences come together to frame our thoughts. So inside Inspiring Communities, we actually are one of the recipients of Communities Building Youth Futures funding from ESDC via Tamarack. And so we have with youth, by youth, for youth, to youth, all over the yin yang in terms of that programming in a rural community. And the question that you're asking, I find has bigger systemic implications than making careers more sustainable for youth in the sector, because even that program, the infrastructure to make it successful, to work in the way that it is supposed to for who is leading it, is not to be underestimated and is much more than the funding that was provided for the program. And then much like with equity deserving people who have moved into leadership positions in the sector, et cetera, the not understanding the underlying limitations or barriers or visible or invisible that really influence lives, whether in the sector or outside of the sector, is part of the conversation. I really appreciated that you talked about people who are able to, choose to work in this sector, regardless of your age, is privileged, because if you do not come from a place of some sort of privilege, then you're going to go and work in provincial and federal government because of the stability and the benefits, et cetera. And so I agree with you. And where our funding comes from, these more stable, more benefit and pension places, I'm curious about how it's inside the sector that is funded by the people with more stable people to solve a problem that is created by the people with more stable funding. So I could say a lot more. I'll wait for other people to weigh in. I think it's a really great question, and I'm curious about if it's us that we need to send it to. So that's what I wanted to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Louise. Lori.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Cheralyn, for sharing a bit more about your organization with us. I was reflecting on kind of your first question, which is, or I guess the combined first and second questions about the sector creating more career paths, and then how do we not lose great talent? And I think maybe I understand the distinction, and at the same time, because I, like Sarah, spent 18 years of my career in the corporate sector, specifically with a corporate foundation, and I didn't see those two as separate. I'm curious about what your experience has been with your organization of the career paths that are available for folks with, working in social innovation and social finance within the corporate sector, because that's certainly something that I had spent the 10 probably years of my time in the corporate sector really advocating for were space and positions that did just that within that sector. And so I, just again, trying to create those opportunities for that kind of, and space for that kind of thinking to be present within the sector to help evolve it from the inside out, if you will. So I'm just curious, maybe you can comment on that, if you've had any experience or success with some of your interns, or some students having some success there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to say I love these comments and kind of questions back. Louise, to your very apt insights. I think it's not just about youth. Like this is long reaching into any stage of a career in this sector. And Lori, to your point, these are not separate questions. They're absolutely intertwined. And a lot of these questions are around stability, and careers are tied directly to funding available to the sector as well. Like it's not just this one piece. In terms of what we've seen alumni go on to do, like a lot of them end up in Big Four consulting, sustainability consulting specifically, but that is a very common path. And then, the ones that stay within this world, they're working at like new market funds and CFC, but in the corporate world, like they go off to be lawyers. And there's this big question of, do I want to immediately dive right after my undergrad or, early on in my career into something that I really deeply care about? Or should I go off and learn from people who have been working in an Accenture or in a private equity firm, like the structures that I need to bring back and then be able to make a bigger impact when I've got more experience? And I don't think there's a right answer. I think it depends on every person. But the conversation we've been having more and more of, especially when it comes to like the finance world, is, do we want to bring the structures that are in traditional finance into this? Like, do we want to replicate those oftentimes very harmful structures? I personally don't think so. I think it's up to debate. But hopefully that answers, some of your questions.
Thanks, Cheralyn. Thanks, Lori. Catherine, and then Tamara. Oh, did you want to say something else, Lori?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, actually, I mean, it actually opens up a whole other suite of questions that are worthy of a whole other discussion to itself. But I really appreciate that point of view, Cheralyn. Thank you.
Thank you. Catherine, and then Tamara.
Hello, it's Catherine, capital W. Thank you so much for the presentation. I don't have an answer to your questions, but I have a reflection. And it's that I'm seeing the other side, where companies are losing younger people because of the absence of meaning. And so to me, there's an extraordinary ability for the social sector to bring meaning through employee engagement, profound employee engagement, and skills-based employee engagement. Because there's a desire for meaning within the private sector context, particularly in the tech industry, I'm noticing. And the social sector is drowning in purpose and has an absence of financial and human capital. And so I see that there's an exchange that can be curated to elevate both sides. And it's exciting because it's a nascent, social impact is kind of a nascent space and adjacent to the charitable and nonprofit typical space. But there's also the older folks within corporate who are wanting to come into the social sector and transition out as a second career. So there's lots of fluidity, and I'm really interested in kind of creating environments to bring down the walls to that fluidity so that we can all be working together doing what we do. And so that's just a reflection. So I think it's a great subject for consideration. And I just wanted to ask you if you have connected with the LEAP PICO Center for Social Impact, because they're, in my view, they're doing the most extraordinary scaling and kind of 4-dimension impact analytic work. And they do have a lot of younger people working with them. And I think they could be a terrific destination. And they're looking at kind of macro national social innovation pieces. So if you're not currently working with them in some way, I would be delighted to make the introduction.
Great.
Thanks, Catherine.
Thanks.
A lot of jumping off points, but I'll follow up with you by email, Catherine.
Perfect. Tamara, Stephen, and wait, sorry, did I get out of order? And Cheralyn, some of you may be going there as well. There's the Sustainable Finance Forum that's being held by government tonight. And so Cheralyn's heading there. So it does have a hard stop at 5. But glad that you're going to be there because I think it actually fits with very much of what we're talking about. Tamara and then Stephen.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, as a leader of an organization that works sort of in the space here of sort of social impact, I would love to be able to provide more roles that are more secure and at a more competitive rate. And I think part of, obviously, as it's already been sort of mentioned, some of the challenges are around, funding schedules for those of us, especially that are based in grant funding primarily. Yeah, just harder to offer that security when you're sort of in a 1 year or 2 year cycle. You can't, quite make long-term commitments. And then, it's probably stating the obvious. But then the other idea that I had, I'm just fresh off the Rotman Institute of Corporate Directors training for not-for-profit leaders. And I'm wondering what the role is for board education specifically, and for, engagements at the board level. Because if boards are responsible for culture building in an organization and a lot of higher level HR policies around, do we give people 1 year contracts or do we just hire them on permanently? It's always been a struggle I've dealt with in multiple boards, never quite understanding exactly what the major challenge was against long-term engagement or long-term employment contracts. Yeah, I just wonder if there's a space there for maybe even for the Rotman training. Could there be opportunities to work with them to try to surface some of the shifts that are present in today's organizations and today's social impact organizations, to become more aware of trends or related to some of the younger demographics, and how do we attract and skill up and train and retain the great talent that's there. And I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity in that space in some small way. And then I guess maybe on your second question, I'll just briefly say I feel like there's an opportunity to normalize co-mentorship a little bit more than we do. I think mentorship programs tend to be sort of an older person mentoring a younger person, and there's value to that, of course. But I think that if we were to all sort of speak and normalize activities related to people learning from one another and learning from younger folks, just as much as we would anticipate learning from sort of older, more seasoned folks, that might be an interesting shift in terms of how we value one another and can learn together and develop together.
Great. Thank you. Cheralyn, do you want to, I think that was a more context giving, but so maybe I'll have Stephen share, and then Cheralyn, maybe you can wrap us up. from there. So Stephen, over to you.
Okay, sure. Well, thanks for the question. I think this is really goes to the kind of core of some of the values that are being tested and that surface around transition. And I guess I would invite us to think about, you know, at the genesis, at its genesis back at UBC, James Tansey was having a conversation with the university about how to host and fund something from the university perspective. And something that I don't think has been explored sufficiently is the idea that universities themselves could be employing their graduates or they're about to be graduates in the development of social enterprises or initiatives like outcomes financed initiatives using their own capacities, which include, number one, quite large endowments, very significant and larger than many foundations, but typically invested just in the stock market. So there's a conversation there about, well, all of this money is sort of being held in trust for the institution by, you know, for past graduates, donors, and so on. Why aren't we investing more and creating more opportunity for current students and about to be graduates who are facing enormous challenges? So I think there's a conversation to be had there, and it goes a little bit further. And I know James was testing this, is let's ask the donors, would you prefer to give a grant to, you know, have your name on sort of little tiny print on the side of the building? Or would you like to invest in a fund that will, you know, put capital to work with some of our most promising young graduates to work on solving social problems or environmental problems or economic distribution problems using, you know, innovative approaches and where there's a potential return on capital. So that's one, I think there's an area that I don't see any place yet in Canada where we're having that conversation in a concentrated and sustained way, but maybe with Carleton is an opportunity to explore that further. And then the second thing is on the corporate side, smart corporations these days are taking some of the excess money they've got sitting on their balance sheets, and they do have a lot, many of them, and putting it to work like the TELUS Pollinator Fund in supporting social enterprises. And I think that's another area to look at those things both as a talent incubator, as a talent retention strategy, and as a social a renewal of the social license to operate for the corporate sector. Let's bring it to them and insist or provide opportunities, doorways, pathways to getting more engaged. And I think nothing is more compelling than having this message come from young people themselves. With the kind of track record you've got, you've managed to do an amazing amount with very little. So congratulations. I hope you get the support you deserve. And I'd love to have a follow-up conversation with you if that's of interest. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for the comments and ideas. I think this is interconnected in so many ways to like a lot of the challenges I think we all know across our organizations. And I can't remember who asked this question, but I don't necessarily think that the onus is on us or just us. Like it's a collective effort of going to the people that have more power, you know, recognizing like as leaders of our organizations, we hold a certain amount of that. But it goes into the TELUSes of Canada and to the university endowments, which is, Stephen, a piece that we are trying to crack. I did the math recently. There's 20 billion in university endowments across Canada. And if they just unlocked 4% of that for impact investing, it would be equivalent to the Social Finance Fund. So some quick math there. But I think that, you know, as we start this, I would love to continue conversations with many of you. We are building out, or we're in the very early stages of designing a program for mid-career professionals to transition into this work. We are still understanding like how we're actually rolling that out and who we're targeting for a pilot model, but we have to talk to a lot of organizations to understand what you need and what your experiences have been, because frankly, that's not a market that we've interacted with too much. But I just want to say thank you to all of the ideas. I will be here for next Wednesday's call. I would love to just hear, you know, what other people are talking about and continue to be part of this conversation. So
great. Thanks,
thank you,
Cheralyn.
Michelle.
I did notice Louise did make an offer about a board she sits on, Empower, if you want to follow up on that. Thanks, Indy, for being part of this. Yeah, big kudos, lots of great conversations, and like what always happens here, we bring big questions, we have bigger questions, and a collective discussion that really, I think, furthers hopefully the work that you're doing, but really to see that as part of, as you said, the broader collective that we're part of. So have fun tonight at the Sustainable Finance Forum. I'm excited to see that opportunity moving forward, and many folks on this call help to move that agenda forward in lots of good ways. And we'll see. So it's 2 weeks from now. And Thomas, I noticed you offered to go in January so that we didn't have 2 sessions in the same week. So we can do that, but it's totally up to you. If you have a more urgent need to connect in December, that's great. And I think that is everything. So I will stay on in case there's any questions or conversations. But thank you, Cheralyn, and Taryn, again for collecting our notes and all your great comments, everybody. Have a good
Thanks so
rest of
much.
the day.
Thank you so much.
Are you still recording?
Oh, wait, let me turn that off. Yes.
Oh, it's okay. It doesn't matter to me either.